On another series.
Okay.
Ready? Okay, let's get started. I want to thank everyone for coming and you want to do a roll call, Julie?
Mayor Mahler,
Present.
Councilor Gerson. Present. Councilor Trask.
Here.
Councilor Goebel.
Here.
Councilor Nash.
Present.
Councilor Gorley. Councilor Coleman. Bob Brianna.
Present.
Derek Dix.
Here.
Dave Journey.
Here.
Dave Loman.
Here.
Garrett Schaefer. Kenneth Hamlin.
Here.
And Lisa Wilson.
Okay, let's get started. Do you have anything before we start with Public Works at all, Brandon?
I do. Which means I need it on the screen. Okay. All right. So we're going to cover a couple of topics that we kind of left open-ended at the end of the last meeting. Specifically, we'll talk about the marijuana funding because that was something y'all wanted to see if you could kind of move that around. We'll talk about the public safety levy and the compression. Then we'll move into the rest of the department reports. So you'll hear Public Works tonight. The Public Works Director is here to do that presentation. You'll hear about my department and municipal court, which is under finance, and then also executive and legislative department, although there isn't much in those last two. So we put them at the end so we can just go right through those and call it good. You'll also then, once all that is said and done, I'll have the motions that this body usually needs to make ready for you at that time, depending on what we move around, so that we can make those motions. We're going to table those is the plan at this point, once we've made that motion, so that we can allow time for public feedback, time for the community to watch this live stream, watch the recording and make any recommendations or comments they'd like to make before we come back on the 19th and revisit that motion. Then that's it. Does anybody have questions before I keep going? All right, marijuana taxes then. So what I found in going through the ORS rules, the Oregon revised statutes, is that there are no longer any requirements regarding where the marijuana shared revenue, what that is spent on. It used to be initially that it had to be spent on enforcement, basically, of marijuana rules and regulations. That isn't the case anymore. The 2018 short session eliminated that rule. You can use it for whatever the city sees fit related to those dollars. To this point, the city has primarily used them on basically enforcement measures. The city of Sweet Home, in its municipal code, chapter 3.34, and specifically 3.34.150, the disposition of marijuana tax revenue. What I learned in this process is that our municipal code says that those tax dollars, the local tax dollars, must be credited to the general fund. Right, for this fiscal year, that money is just going into the police department. So we're going to need to kind of redo how we treat those dollars. That's kind of up for this body to decide. Our proposal for you at this point is that we deposit those dollars into the general fund as stated, and then we set up a transfer out of the general fund into whichever program you decide you want to put them into, whether that's the library, the police department, or something totally different. But I imagine one of those two is kind of what you were discussing at your last meeting. So beyond that, I don't have anything specifically related to this. If anybody wanted to kind of kick off the conversation about those dollars and kind of see where we go with them, I guess.
How much money are we talking about?
The 182,000 something, wasn't it?
Yes, 180,000 and change.
187.
And while you're looking, how much is in that fund? Do we have more money than that 100 and whatever it is?
How much is in what fund?
The marijuana fund that we've accumulated over the years?
Or has all that money gone to the
Yes, we
police
were talking
department?
about.
It's been in a mix of places. This is the first year that we specifically put it in the police department. It's been in the general fund before that,
Oh, okay.
with a portion of this, with the state dollars going over to the police department is how that was working in the past. So for next fiscal year, we budgeted $182,783 in marijuana tax revenue. Now, I can kind of skip this temporarily because I think this will also be dependent on kind of what you think of the property tax information when we get there. Because those kind of went hand in hand in the last conversation. So we can move over to the property tax discussion and then kind of circle back to this if you'd like and cover both of them at once.
Let's do that.
Brendan, when you budgeted the marijuana tax, you only had the one marijuana store, correct, at the time? And then the other one opened up sometime.
When we budgeted for this year, we kind of took an estimate based on what we anticipated. It was kind of a shot in the dark, really. We didn't know how much marijuana would be sold within city limits. We severely undershot. And so, yes, it was kind of based on the idea of one store that was open at that point. I think now there's 3. Looking for somebody who, 4?
4?
3 or 4 stores that are currently open that we then collect, or the Department of Revenue collects tax money on.
So Brandon,
3 or 4. Yes.
if we decide to move this money into, for instance, the library,
Mhm.
can we be very specific and say we want it to go into the library capital money?
Yes, you
It
could.
can be specific.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have different funds set up for, so if you decided that it was going to go to library capital specifically, we do have a project and equipment reserve that we would put that into in your workbooks. If you want to see it, that's Fund 202.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna move over to the property tax conversation and then we'll kind of lump them all into one conversation. So at the last meeting, we had a big conversation surrounding, if you all remember, the proposal that we put forth, which was to take 30 cents less on the public safety levy for the coming fiscal year. The result of that was about $230,000 in revenue that the police department would not see next year. So there were some questions regarding what would it do to compressions, where would that money go? And so I have, I think, most of your answers, and if I miss any, please feel free to let me know. Under the current structure, the total tax rate in the city of Sweet Home, if you are within the city limits, is $16.74 per 1,000. That includes the county tax rates, the Sweet Home Fire and Ambulance District, the 4-H, the Sweet Home Cemetery District, and then the city of Sweet Home itself. Of that $16.74, the permanent rate for us is $1.45 per thousand. The police department's rate is currently $7.85 per thousand, and the library is $1.17 per thousand. In this current year, or what that would do is, if we left those rates in place for 2021, we're anticipating that 3,287 homes would still be under compression of some kind. The dollar amounts vary wildly based on property, but that's a 74%, that's 74% of the property in Sweet Home in some kind of compression. The average compression is $461.71. So that is the amount that is lost to, there are 3 local option levies that currently impact the city of Sweet Home. That's the amount that is lost for Sweet Home specifically for R2 is $461.71. If we were to do the full tax rate, then obviously the police department revenue, well, you wouldn't see any change. We'd add the new revenue in there.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Okay, I have a question. Last year,
if you remember, we talked about the 4-H fund and why we still have a 4-H thing that comes out. And I still want to know, I was still wondering, why do we still have that in there and why do we keep it?
I don't,
Well, it was voted on by the community.
Right.
So they're a separate, it's a separate entity from the city, as I understand it.
I think, Mr. Chairman, I think, is that partly due to the Lynn County place in Albany that has the Lynn County, whatever they call that?
The fairgrounds?
Yeah, the fairgrounds. Is that part of where that goes, or is that where it all goes?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't know. I don't know where it goes. I don't know who collects it.
at some point there was, and it's not a levy amount. It's not annually renewable. It's not renewable every 5 years. So that tells me it's a permanent rate of some kind that the citizens of Lynn County decided to put into place.
I'd be willing to bet that that's part of the county fair. And to be honest with you, I don't know how much we get out of that. I don't know. I know there's people that do cows and pigs and all that stuff over there that they sell for, I guess it's 4-H, but I don't know how much good we get out of that. I don't know.
It's a permanent rate, so it's at this point not being compressed under in any form. But of course it does go towards that $10 per thousand real market value limit that we kind of covered in our first budget meeting.
Thank you.
Brendan, is the $70 still holding? I mean, that's what you said before, that that 26% would get approximately 70,000, $70.
On a $250,000 house, assessed valued house, they'd get about $70.
Right. So if it's a $150,000 house, what are we looking at?
Well, if you went for 125,000, because that's easy math.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No, that's fine. Then you'd be looking at $35.
Okay.
Ish. This is very rough math because
Right.
compression is a very finicky thing, and the county always has its own methodology for coming up with it. But we assume basically for $150,000 assessed value home, you would see $35 back on your tax bill if you're not under compression.
And so the only way we could get out of that particular line item is if the people voted for it then.
Out of the 4-H
Yes.
component, yes, I imagine that would have to be, I don't know the exact structure, but a ballot initiative of some kind that ultimately would repeal that.
I'd like to know where that actually goes if we could find that out.
We can work on that. Raise my note taker for me. So under the proposed structure, you can see the number looks basically the same for the total tax assessed per thousand, but it's really $16.44 per thousand. Permanent rate still $1.45. The police department rate would be $7.55 per thousand. The library rate remains the same at $1.17. Under this scenario, we would see 96 additional homes come out of compression. Not a lot, out of 4,425 homes. So only 72% would be in compression. The average compression amount at that point, the amount we lose is $421.75, a difference of $40 basically.
Brendan, since I'm new to your town, I've only been here 2 years. I'm still, I'm confused, I guess, in some way with the compression.
Okay.
Is that meaning less taxes or total tax dollars that they pay on their house per year? Is that why when you were saying 96 houses would come out of compression, they'd end up paying more taxes?
It means they would pay the full tax amount. So in the state of Oregon, if a property exceeds the $10 per thousand real market value, then everything starting with the local option levies, all of the tax rates are then compressed equally to get you within that $10 per thousand market valuation.
So the 1644 really doesn't matter. It's still 10.
Right, the 1644 is on assessed value, but the measure 5 was $10 per thousand on real market value. And the way this plays together is based on that graph that the property tax fairy highlighted for us, where real market value and assessed value are two different lines. When they meet, that's when we have some issues. But as long as real market value hangs out up here, then you typically, and assessed values down here, you typically don't have as many issues.
Then if they come, like those 96 houses come out of compression, does the value of their homes also increase?
It means in order to get there, the value of their home has increased in some fashion, because the assessed value increases at 3% every year. So that, yes, that means the value of their home has increased in some fashion. It just because it comes out of compression doesn't mean then that the real market value will increase. But at that point, so a lot of times what happens inside city limits is property tax owners kind of see tax bills that go like this because the compression varies from year to year. If you're out of the compression, you know basically that your taxes each year are only going to go up that 3%. And that's kind of what that was built for. Yeah.
I wish I hadn't missed the first meeting. Why are we talking about this 30 cents out of the PD?
So it was part of the proposal that we put together for you. We proposed taking 30 cents less of that property tax rate. We have spent the last few years kind of making up for lost time, so to speak. We've replaced a bunch of vehicles in the police department, replaced needed equipment, so on and so forth. This was kind of our way of giving back to the residents and saying, we don't need the whole tax rate.
That's a good explanation. Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we had already proposed that it stays the same, levy stays the same.
You did, but there were questions on what that would look like. So in these properties, this 72% that are still under compression, that $70 on a $250,000 home then means that, they're about the same. The Lynn County levy would see $35 and the library would actually see a $35 increase as well for that one property. So that was kind of the conversation, in which the conversation surrounded most of it. I think everybody kind of said, yes, we'd like to do that, but we want to see what that looks like. How many homes would see that kind of a benefit specifically? And if not, what's going to go where? And basically it's 50-50 split. The county and the library would share the excess, the additional revenue boost as a result. So here's kind of the I guess the decision point for the committee. We can leave the additional 30 cents in there. Ask for you can ask for the $7.85 per thousand. The police department sees a revenue boost of $230,000 in the 2021 budget that you have before you. And then the question after that becomes, did you want to move some of the marijuana tax money around to kind of address that revenue boost, or do you want to leave it?
I know last time when we talked about keeping the 70 cents, because you take it out, then not to maybe upset the community about them paying where they could save that money, is because we wanted to make sure we kept the extra money for the, I guess, police department for security and the safety of the community. That's the reason. If you take it out, then they get used to that 70 cent savings. Then if it comes up again, those people are going to say, oh no, we like it just the way it is. So they already are paying for it now. So it's not like they're missing that 70 cents. And personally, I would rather have the safety of the extra protection.
Mr. Chairman, when I was on the council, and the mayor can get more behind this, and I talked to the former mayor, there was talk about that we had promised that we would not take the money if we didn't need it. And everyone I've talked to that was on the council at that point does not remember that. I don't remember a conversation like that. I don't think the mayor, if I'm wrong, didn't say so. I don't remember having a discussion about that. We may have a discussion, but we didn't make any promises that I remember. And neither did
there was discussion, but there was no council decision.
Yeah, so that's kind of where that came from, because of that stuff that was going on at the time. I won't mention any names, but it was Sean Morgan. He swore up and down that that was true, and I do not know, it could be, but I do not remember one thing about that.
No.
And Jim was on the council for way before I was. And so he doesn't remember it either. But anyway, that's kind of where that came from. I think
So adding, if the committee decides to put that $230,000 in revenue back into the police department from that tax levy, our proposal at that point then is to essentially restore one position to full funding. So if you remember the conversation from last week, we'd taken 2 out of the budget, 1 was in contingency. We're proposing putting 1 into the actual staff pay lines, only funding that line, that position, and then leaving 1 in the contingency still. Because if you'll also remember, we're budgeting 92% collection rate, which is lower than we typically have, but there's a lot of question marks surrounding COVID-19 and what it means for property tax generation in all cities across Oregon. So we're taking a cautious approach. If we see some of that revenue come in higher than we had anticipated, if that position's in the contingency, we can come back to council and say, we think we're in a position where we can fill this spot and we'd like to with your blessing.
Like I mentioned in last meeting, it's a double-edged sword. You take away, you may never see it back. And second of all, I think during these times, I think it's imperative that we maintain our law enforcement at the level it's at. I don't think we need to have any reduction. I don't know if anybody's been watching the news. There's discussion, the Oregon State Troopers are going to be being cut back. Who knows else is going to get cut back? And I think at this present time, we keep our community safe. And I think it's very imperative we do that.
Well, and like the news is talking about, since of this coronavirus, a lot of businesses are closed, so they're having a lot of break-ins.
Yes.
So I really believe we should keep that. Police department could use that money if they're gonna get that marijuana money taken away from them. I think that money should stay with them.
I firmly believe that it's important to maintain our level. And I think our local law enforcement is doing an excellent job. And I stand behind them. And I think that we should keep it at the level we're at.
Mr.
I
Chairman.
I don't think anybody in the room disagrees with that. Nobody I know anyway. My question is this money from the marijuana, we can use that in a lot of places. Yeah. And I don't saying, and we can divvy that up like.
We want to use it for the library because they're getting.
Yeah, whatever. I think, in my opinion. Wait a minute. I don't think that one has anything to do with the other in my mind. No. You just keep the police department up and then we talk about the marijuana revenue. I think the marijuana money, in my opinion, we shouldn't be too hasty to spend it immediately or say we're going to put it in one place for another. I think you said put it in the general fund. It sits there and then the council can decide at a time to where they want. If it's a library capital, it's library capital. There you go. Something may come up. We say, this is a huge priority for our community. We may take a little bit here, a little there. I mean, it's up to the council. But I don't think we need to have a decision tonight just where that marijuana money goes.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Greg, and I agree with putting the person back on as, I don't know how long that takes. If that's at the end of this year or whatever it is. However, my fear is that after the first year and what happens, we don't know. It's a little bit up in the air, and I would hate to hire somebody and then not be able to keep them. But I think that we can make that work. And I want them to be full staff. I mean, I think that they need that. So I agree. I think that we should just staff them, and then if it doesn't work out for the next person, the next one, then we'll just deal with that.
Just for an information standpoint.
I think we're beating a dead horse. We already agreed on that.
Yeah, everybody said the same thing.
We all already agreed last week. I don't know what we're talking about here.
So
There was a request to see what the numbers would be.
Right. And we agreed with it, and the numbers still show the same.
We didn't vote on anything.
Everybody agreed.
But everybody agreed. This conversation is, everybody saying the same thing.
Exactly.
We already agreed on
Let's
this.
go on.
Let's go on.
My recommendation is we go on.
Mine also.
I think there's good wisdom in what Greg's saying about retaining that marijuana money in the general fund. We shouldn't be too hasty.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
So, Brandon, would you explain to me, sorry, you said the county and the library would benefit from that $230,000, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and what percentage?
It would almost be a 50-50 split. I think the county levy is a little bit more than the library levy, which maybe it's more like 55-45, but it's right around 50-50.
And they will take it. They absolutely
They will
will.
put it to good use.
Yeah, they will.
Are we all comfortable?
I'll make the adjustments in my spreadsheet so that your motion tonight is the right one. And I will let Greg talk while I do that.
Public Works. And we're at 10 in the book.
Ready to go?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you've all taken time to read this budget thoroughly, right? You have tons of questions for me. Well, let's dive into this. I want to kind of, when I get going tonight, I just kind of want to give you, I'm appreciative of all the support that this committee has given to Public Works last year. And you gave us some equipment. You gave us some other things that we could do some projects, and I want to kind of touch on those, give you a little bit of update of what we did with those funds. So I'll kind of go through those as quickly as possible, and then we can talk about those 5 funds, right, that we're going to be discussing. So, first of all, last year we did quite a few work orders. Brandon, you got it? One more. Thank you. You can see we did about 120 water leaks. We did 544. I knew that was coming. I got to do 2. All right. We repaired 544 potholes. We did over 4,100 miles of street sweeping. We had 397 collection pickups for leaves. That's an increase of almost about 80 from last year. Quite a few cubic yards of leaves were removed. You can see we keep up with our park restrooms and garbage runs, mowing parks and so forth. We look back on, I got to do this one too, huh? There. For some of the admin things that we did on the water treatment and wastewater treatment, I'm sure some of you guys have heard some discussion related to the contract that we have with Jacobs. We've been kicking around this for about 11 months. So we've been working hard on trying to dial them in with some deficiencies that they had at the water plant. We had direction from council, and we are going to go out and select a new vendor for our water and wastewater treatment plant. We also kicked off SDC updates, what we call system development charges. Those is what dictates what a contractor or anybody that's developing what they would pay in water, sewer, street, storm drains, and parks. As a rule of thumb, your water and wastewater rates are way up high. Usually your SDCs are low. Usually there should be some sort of a happy medium, and we're trying to bring those SDCs in line with other cities. I believe we're probably one of the lowest in the state, to be honest. And even after we're looking at the study, we're probably would still be in the bottom third when we're done. So we really don't get any revenue from contractors. And then we did some upgrades to our facility dude system, which is what our work order system is and what helps us stay busy and keep track of the things we do and log work in our back. Yeah, I appreciate it. Let's probably get this going quicker. Yeah. Specifically for wastewater collections and storm drain, we've been working on final design with Murray Smith. We're about 60%. You'll probably in the upcoming months, council will be much more involved when we get to looking at what we need project funding, some grant loans. We've already been working with USDA, DEQ, and Kids Oregon. Staff installed a new sewer main on 53rd and Osage this year. It's about 200 feet. We installed 5 new sewer laterals and abandoned an old surcharging manhole. We also did manhole ground injection on 5 manholes. Yeah, just go return. Brandon? Good. Okay. One more. Okay. For the water division, it was a big year. We spent a lot of time dealing with our water system. I'm sure you guys have read some articles. In this year, we purchased new leak detection equipment. We identified and repaired over 120 leaks. One repair, which was just a few weeks ago, if you've seen in the paper, it is estimated to save 340,000 gallons a day. The last week's average supported about 327,000 gallon savings. This week's average was about 375,000 gallon savings. So if you fit in between, we're right around in that mark. So looking at those numbers, we believe that it's really took a big dent out of our water loss. We think in that range might be now somewhere in about 10 or 15%, which is industry and it's kind of the industry standard. We identified older 2-inch water mains and some water meters that are on those old mains that could be actually replaced and moved over to newer water systems and then abandoned. And so we're kind of already digging through all that. We installed 2 new 6-inch water mains, one on Spruce Street and a second on Nandina. Served about 20 homes for both of those total. Provided better water quality. We got rid of those old 2-inch water mains. We're just going to keep chipping away at them. We designed a new hypochlorite system, which staff is currently purchasing, and hopefully within the next month or 2, we will be switching over from generation of chlorine on site with salt versus just having bulk solutions brought in from a vendor. Much more economical, it doesn't have corrosion, and you don't have the high expense of capital to keep that up and maintain. We also did water modeling this year, the water distribution system, which should be completed in the next month. I believe this week or last week, we did pressure system testing throughout the entire system to correlate and calibrate this system, this model system in the computer system. We also installed 180 ultrasonic water meters. The difference between your current water meter and an ultrasonic is totally 2 different types of technology. These have about a 10-year, the current ones have about a 10-year kind of warranty. The new ones have about a 20-year. They are exactly the same cost. The difference is that these read very, very low flow leaks. So people that have leaks in their homes, if we put these meters in, we will be able to read those meters and then charge those people. We think we have a lot of issues with our water meters out here. We also made SCADA improvements just in the last month, which now has given us constant communication for all of our reservoirs. Before, because of the way it was designed, it was intermittent. So when it doesn't do that connection, you lose that data for many, many set points. Now we get that data every second, every time that it draws that out of the system. Parks and facilities, we were really busy. We had the new City Hall project. We did landscaping, tree removal. You see the lawn, irrigation. We did exterior painting and staining, parking lot improvements, and we had a ton of punch list stuff to get approved before grand opening. We also have been working on Sankey Park. We installed a new restroom. We removed the old restroom. We expanded the parking lot and put in some new sidewalks. And if you've been out at Sankey lately, there's a lot more work going on with trenching paths, being prepared for the new playground. We're going to have a nice park here in the upcoming months.
And you paved the road behind the senior center that made everybody over there so happy. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I see they did some work over there. I haven't been over there, but I know Dominic did some stuff. There was some rock.
It was great.
I think the senior center, that's all Ken. He actually purchased the rock. I think we went out there and helped him.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So. Streets. Now this is, I want to give you guys all the good news in the world. I failed this year on streets. We put out a project to do all those streets that you see listed in the top part. When I got the budget back in for the estimate, just 29th Avenue alone with ADA ramps exceeded the $280,000 that we budgeted for all those. So we brought in some engineers, we've looked at our streets. What we're gonna try to do is Lynn County has a new chip seal program. And we're gonna start identifying streets that can be recoated and painted by putting compounds down and putting chips and try to extend the life of ours. I'll be honest with you guys, we don't have a lot of good transportation money. We get some streets tax, some gas tax. This is one of the funds that struggles, and you can see through our town how our streets are that we're behind, and we're going to stay behind. So this is an area that I want to improve on, and I want to do better in the future. But I think what you're going to see is a lot of chip sealing coming up in this upcoming budget. We'll talk about it a little bit more. So what I asked this year in this budget, I didn't ask for any new money. I asked for this year's money to be rolled over into this next year's budget. And we're going to take another stab at this, put some RFPs out, and we're going to try to do some different type of technology. See if we can stretch those funds out. With the speed radar signage, we purchased 2. You've seen them around town. We have 4 more that are sitting in our bays right now, waiting on permits with ODOT, and that should be hopefully in the upcoming months resolved. I believe we have to do some sort of an intergovernmental agreement. Fleet equipment, you can see our equipment's getting better. We are using the equipment. If you guys see how around town, we are appreciative. The guys are glad we have it, and we're putting it to good use. That we purchased that chassis and we put a dump bed on it. We bought a new roller compactor. You're seeing it being used on all of our streets, potholes, and you're seeing it used in the parks right now with our trails. The toolcat multiple attachment has about 8 different ones. You see the grass that we did out here. You see the things that we're doing at Sankey Park. That tool has been a big part of that. We got a new John Deere mower. We're trying to keep up with our parks. We also got a new snow plow that we actually put on the vehicle, and I don't think we got to really try it, but we almost did this year. So let's look forward. My organizational chart, which is, you can see there's a couple of gray boxes, one in the water distribution and one in fleet. Those positions, as of this year, they were vacant. You can see in this new budget year that those bodies have kind of been moved around to accommodate where we're currently at. I think that's that discussion, is if we have some of them bodies that you kind of see them in here, but they're not financially in the budget. The person that is Thomas Roby in the streets has been moved over to fleet, and he's been filling that void, and we've been running with 3 water distribution workers over the last couple months since we had an individual retire. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. That's what I'm looking at going into next year. So it's an actual reduction again. When I started here 3 years ago, if you look at this, that's like 4 less bodies than I had when I first got here. So we have less and we're doing more. So let's talk about some of those 5 funds. I listed up here that it's Public Works Administration. The reason I did that is because it's more of a high up when you're dealing with contracts and stuff. But this wastewater treatment and contract operations, we kind of talked about Jacobs and the things that we have been coming across. We sent the RFP to council this week, who has liked the contract, and so we're going to bring it back in a couple weeks and with maybe a couple corrections and ask the council to allow us to put it out to select a new vendor. The current cost in the budget is split between both the water and wastewater fund, and I think you got about 1.1 roughly, Brandon, somewhere in there. So those are, you'll see those dollars hanging out under professional services in each of those funds, right? So you'll see those split in half. When we go out to contract, this contract's going to look different. We may be able to make a savings here, the way this is going to be constructed. So basically we're saying it's going to be no greater than that, and we're hoping that we can bring it in a lot lower than that when we negotiate. Engineer of record, last year I put this RFP out to help with get some of the projects out. That was a 1-year contract for that engineering firm with a 3-year option. We have opted not to renew that contract. And so last Tuesday night, we actually sent that RFP for review and information only to council, who gave us permission. We'll bring it back in a couple weeks. To fund that engineer of record, that would come out of the individual capital fund projects as we do streets to design. If we do something with the water plant, we need design. If we need something in parks, we have capital funds. They would take a portion of that for design and then design it. And then we go out and construct it. Water and stormwater division. Again, I talked about the wastewater treatment plant improvement project. We are in final design. We're going to have to do some value engineering. Value engineering is when you construct a plant and you're using government dollars, there is a requirement to have a third-party engineering firm overlook your project. And so it is a requirement for USDA. And so that we'll be doing that in the upcoming months. We're going to be seeking DEQ approval. We'll also be solidifying the USDA funds and also the intermittent funds during construction, which will probably come from either DEQ or Biz Oregon. With those funds, there are grants tied with them. USDA will give us $7 million with $3 million on top of that as a grant. Those type of things is where there's incentives for us to work with them. So we're hoping to select by the end of the year, develop an RFP, or by the start of next year, have a contractor selected and commence construction in spring of 2021. The cost of that project to the city, I believe, is about 11.9. The whole project is 28 million too, which we're going to have some grant funds. About 2 years, I want to say, 2 years ago, you guys raised the rates, or council raised the rates. That money has helped bank some money that we can support our construction costs. So originally, when we sat down with USDA and all the organizations that are going to fund this, we were asking for about $17-18 million. Now we're thinking we're only going to need about $7 million. That's how much money we've gotten from. Ray has gone out and done a great job. We've got $2 million and then another $7 million from the infrastructure committee. So that's going to help our funds going down the road greatly. I asked for, usually I have a reoccurring manhole ring and cover replacement project. That this year we used that funds to do that sewer line on Osage because of issues that we had there. So I didn't do any ring and cover, but I used those funds to actually do some sewer work. This year, Brandon has left $95K in there. We're planning on doing a few manholes and stuff, but if something that came up with the sewer system, then we would probably use some of those funds to do that work. Also, stormwater. I think we pay $1 on our water rate, and it's really not a lot. So we're hoping that we can do a sewer master plan this year, because if you know our storm system, it's really a hodgepodge of different types of pipes and materials. It's just been kind of piecemealed over the years. There's no formal plan and direction and all that. And I'm not even sure it's going to cost $105,000, but we need to figure how we're going to convey water out of the streets of our town and do it right. And we need to know where our choke points are and all those things. And I don't know, I don't understand that right now. So that's what that money would go towards. Help kind of pay that. So water division, this includes the line items for the treatment and then actually the distribution as well. You can see the lion's share of the money's going to the water side. We had some analysis done this year that we found, and I've heard tons of complaints, and maybe some of you guys experience. We have low water pressure. We have intermittent spikes in pressures, right? So what we found was when the plant was designed, the water treatment plant, and maybe I can bring Stephen in on this a little bit. When it was designed, when they push water out into the system, everything, it's pushing the bottom into so its elevation is lower, so it's pushing it up into the hills. And what doesn't get taken by the homeowners along the way gets pushed up into the reservoirs. So it kind of equalizes it by pushing it. When they have to backwash a filter, and there's 3 filters at this water plant, they stop pumping water. So then the reservoirs start pushing water back the other way. So you're pushing, and you kind of have these 2 systems that are pushing water into this system. when you push water, then you stop, you get a hammer effect. And if you know anything about hammer effect in large water systems, you can break pipes. And we're dealing with we got an old system, we're dealing with tons of leaks. So what we're saying is that we would like to be able to pump water into the system and be able to backwash our pumps at the same time, or our filters at the same time, without interrupting service to into our distribution system. The variable frequency drives that are part of that, instead of a hard 1,600 gallons per minute start on a pump, that variable frequency drive starts off real slow. It's like electric car, right? And it picks up momentum, right? So you slowly push water into the system. Those will have a calming effect on our water system. And normally variable drives, I'm not sure why they didn't put them on in the first place. So we want to stabilize our distribution system. And the way we can do that is I can literally, by doing this, I can backwash any filter and consistently stabilize my water system at the same time. And that was been recommended from Murray Smith through their study this year. Also in this budget, we have 9th Avenue 2-inch main replacement. We have had over almost 35 leaks between Cedar and on 9th Street by Cedar. And I know we talked about this over and over and over. My staff's prepared right now to at least do one section of it because that's how bad it is. But we're gonna ask for this money, and I want to replace that whole section of 9th Street. I want to start chipping away at our 2-inch mains where we can. Like I said, we got 20 homes off 2-inch mains this year. I want to take a bigger stab on 9th Street this year. Parks and facilities, everything, only money we have is grant money and what money's left for from the general fund for parks. That money, you can see how I've written it out with, we have the grant, which the whole project is about 440,000. Our match was 235 and some change. And you can see that Public Works is pretty much doing all the work on that. And if you haven't gone out to Sankey Park, I encourage you guys to go out there. Streets, we have 300K in there for the ODOT's project, which is going from 53rd to out to the lake sidewalk project. This is something they've been in design now for a couple of years, and Joe Graybill has kind of been the project manager agent working with ODOT. And then we talked about chip seal. You can see where that 280,000 is sitting in my budget, which I will carry it over from this year to this upcoming year's budget. Fleet, and I don't know, you can see I'm asking for the biggest expense is to replace our John Deere backhoe. That backhoe is 26 years old. We purchased it originally. It's been in the river once, as I understand it.
Just once.
Just once.
Just once.
It is our heart and soul. We have that and a little excavator. If I had to guess at the two biggest pieces of equipment, it'd be the backhoe and it would be my Vector. Those two things get us into the ground, they get us safely, and we can do a lot of work. I don't have plans to, at this time, to actually get rid of our current backhoe because there's times where guys are stumbling over each other and we could need a piece of equipment to sit in the yard to load dump trucks for gravel and those type of things. But I'm looking at replacing an old dump truck and one of the F-150s. And I know there's some other things that we're working on in fleet management to try to improve these areas. But that is pretty much, I know you guys got tons of questions.
Brandon, do we want to break before we do questions?
You can do questions, but then I might break after that just to allow folks to, if the committee has questions, they should ask first, would be my recommendation.
Okay.
I don't have any questions. I just now see where the marijuana money can go.
I have a question for your park expenses, temporary pay. What you're requesting for 2021, is it jumping 35,000? Because you're asking for like 39,000. In 2019, you used 4,000. So I'm thinking 20, you're using maybe 5 or 6.
What line item are you talking about?
On page 59,
Okay,
item number 120, temporary pay. You're for 2021, you're asking for 39,000. And
Yes.
2019, you used 4,000. 2020 is not in there, but I'm guessing maybe you used 5 or 6. So how,
I think
That's a jump in.
Brandon did last year. Did you split it between the temps between funds?
No. So the temps that we've had in temporary pay this so far landed in this current fiscal year that we're in, the 2020. So what happened is we were using a temporary service prior to that. That money's budgeted down in the professional services. The city made a decision that it would be better, that we would be better off hiring our own temporary employees and employing them through the city instead of a temp service.
because you use a temp service, you're paying like double compared to.
There's a premium you pay for them to manage that process, and then this way we're in control of who we get.
There's definitely quality.
Yeah, we weren't getting great quality from the tech
So we
service.
we're switching. The dollars didn't change, just how they're funded changed.
Mr. Chairman, now,
And these are the temps that do our parks and stuff in the summertime, and we kind of stagger them a little bit, and they help with streets in part of the year. And yeah,
did we or did we not hire one of those people full-time?
we have, this year we did hire one, and he'll be coming off probation pretty soon, and he is working in parks and doing an outstanding job.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
Insurance. For all of the categories under Public Works, it comes to almost about $46,000. What is the insurance?
The insurance is our property and casualty insurance, so it's through the city county insurance services. It covers our buildings. It covers if there's a catastrophic issue or a major repair of sorts, an unanticipated type.
So in the Public Works, it would be vehicles also?
Yes, it would.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Greg. While the new wastewater treatment plant is going to be built, is it going to be one section at a time? Or is it going to be, how is it going to be done? My question basically revolves around the backwash pumps, the variable friction drive, which I understand. Is that also going to be put in? I mean, when you make the new wastewater treatment plant, will those things be in there?
Yes.
So my question would
Yes.
be, why would you?
That's a water
Right
treatment
now.
plant. That's the water treatment plant.
Oh, okay. Something different.
Totally, yeah. We're talking about the water system versus after it's gone through everybody's household and come to the plant.
Gotcha. Okay. My other question would be, it says here you requested, now it's probably something that Brandon did, I'm sure. But it says requested here on total water resources, 4 million, roughly 0.46515. And then it says proposed 21, 4,545,914. It's a difference of $400,000. Did I miss something?
That's a wastewater.
It's underwater resource.
What page are you?
Ending resource. What page? What I'm saying, how did we get an extra $400,000 from proposed and requested?
What page?
Oh, for the water user fees. So the initial, when we did these budgets in December, we had an estimated amount that we were using. That was based on the rates at the time. Since that point, we've gone through the city council to request a new rate. And so when they approved that rate, that's what went into the proposed column
So this was a new rate for, what again?
for water.
That was years back, so.
No, we just passed that in April. We have new water rates
That's right, the new water.
that we passed in April.
That's right. And Jacobs and utility. So I know Steve's there, but what is the whole thing that Jacobs does? I thought it was just one person that was there for you.
No, they have a crew of people. It should be around 5 or 6 people. They operate, do all the admin, operation, maintenance, everything of our water treatment plant and our wastewater treatment plant.
Okay.
And that contract to Jacobs was just under for this year. I think it was $1,061,000 and some change.
Right.
But there were also many deficiencies that we found, and they've made those corrections. But the confidence is lost. So I think we're going to do better when we find a new vendor.
I know you told me about that. You're looking for somebody who can save some money.
Absolutely. Well, I think we want better service first.
Yeah.
Then we'll hopefully get some money out of it, but with service first.
Safety park funds, are they all, they can't be touched because they're coming from grants, is that correct? They can't be touched.
The capital money is primarily locked into that grant. Where it says, I think it's under projects and improvements, that money is locked down. That's the grant money. Anything else outside of that certainly could be revised.
So I drove by the Strawberry Park before I got here. When I was on the council, I asked for this too. I'd really like to see a dog park. Now, I don't know whether you can put any money in a dog park. Isn't that expensive? It's just a bunch of, put up a fence, put up a little thing for the doggy bag so they can pick up their boots.
So the dog park idea has been run through and gone through the Park and Tree Committee. Not exactly sure where they've left it though, but that would be.
Yeah, I don't think they completed yet, but they discussed it.
Yeah.
Of course, with everything happened, they haven't met.
Yeah, they haven't met in a couple
So
months
they've
now.
been discussing it this.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I heard that Councilor Gerson was gonna pay for the whole thing. That's what I heard.
Now, just
I offered.
Robert, I don't know where you were going with this, but you're specifically talking about wastewater and then this extra funds. Now, you know that water funds, wastewater funds and water funds
Right.
are enterprise and they can only be used for those things.
Right, I was just talking about the Sankey money. That's why I asked you.
Yeah,
There was a.
that's specifically tied into that grant.
Right, but you said there's some optional money there that isn't. What I understood, incorrect?
Sorry, in the parks budget, the line that really can't be touched is the grant money in the projects and improvements line. Anything else in that budget could potentially be reallocated, increased, decreased, whatever.
What I would just caution you of is the Park and Tree Committee does have a master plan. Right, and just trying to be, excuse me. Again, being a former Parks and Rec guy.
Right, but you were.
I'd love to do a lot more at all of our parks, but we just don't have the resources. So we're trying to be strategic, tackle Sankey, finish up Sankey, and then we'll move on down the list with the Park and Tree Committee's recommendations. But we're trying to get one done first before we forget where we're at and jump all over the place. So, okay.
Mr. Chairman, Greg, I think we had a discussion once about maybe saving some money for the electric bills, utilities, and all those things. And it's going to be interesting to see how much that changes for the stuff that you have to have in the water plant to make that a little easier than, a little cheaper than the way it was before. Not knocking Jacobs too much, but
The contract.
they charged and what we can get it for might be significantly different. And I don't know if that's true or not, but
I don't know if that's the case anymore. We've had discussions with utilities, other utilities, and they're like, or chemical vendors, they're like, no, you get the same price. So it's not so much that, but definitely there could be a savings with electricity, chemicals. We're not going to see that right now. That 30% savings that we did on that leak, that's going to go right in Jacob's pocket until we get them out of there. Now, we weren't paying the electrical bill before directly, so we'll have to go back and see what those charges were versus what they are now. We can look at the usage versus the actual charge.
Yeah.
We will at some point. But the thing is that if they take that and pay that as a part of that contract, they can mark it up 10% as a part of, administration costs and other things. And that's just something we pay for.
Mm-hmm.
But why do that when it should be just a pass-through cost? So I'm hopeful that we will, at least in that area of things, will save money. I don't know what the contract labor side is going to look like, but we'll get to the table soon enough.
I have one more comment if I could.
Okay.
I'm happy to see that your travel and training has gone up. And I like that for the police too. I think that we underestimate that somewhat, and we need to train people. I mean, this changed from what we have now and what we're gonna have in the public works is gonna be, we need to get some people on board.
We got some new certifications. Guys got certifications this year. We had Dominic become our DRC. He's responsible now for our water system. We also recently had one of our younger employees went out and now is a state certified applicator of pesticides and different things. So that's just happened in the last couple of weeks. So we're pushing people and wanting them to thrive. And I think a lot of them are enjoying it, right? They weren't able to do some of those things before. So
I agree with Councilor Trask. It's good to see that go up, especially with our future plans, what we're gonna do with the water treatment.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
Would you explain a little bit more about professional services for streets and parks, both of which are $12,500? What are the professional services for those two areas?
in parks,
Yep, that's page 59.
yeah. Well, if you can actually see, I came in 2017, it wasn't my budget. In 18, it was up there. So I keep trying to drop it down every year.
What does it, what do you use it for? What professional services do we?
Let's say something happens and I now have to have an engineer design something in streets, right? I blow out a pipe, or I got to put a new storm drain pipe, and I got to regrade streets. I would use that money to then design, or any type of work that would engineering that would help support the things that we're doing as an emergency. And that's kind of the way I look at professional services for
Is that the
streets.
same for parks?
And I'm sure there's others. If I go back and look at that line item, I'm sure there's a lot of other little things that come out of there.
Would that be the same for parks?
That's what I'm talking about, parks right now. But I mean, in both of them in general, all I can say is professional services. This may be something we need to look at. I've been trying to decrease that amount every year because I'm not using it as much. But I know if I needed to use it, that's how I would use it.
1 year it was used for legal services.
Yeah, professional services covers anything that we have to hire an outside vendor to accomplish, whether that's an electrician to fix something that we can't fix in the park. It could be on the street side, like Greg was saying, it could be a contractor to design or to patch a hole that we just can't do in-house, or that's what the professional services type stuff covers.
I guess why I'm asking about that is because in Public Works alone, it looks like professional services are $300,000 over the 1 million that we pay Jacobs. So I would personally like to see some of that money go more into training our own people to do these kinds of things so that we don't have to hire it out. So I agree with both Mayor Marler and Dave that the more training we do with our people that we have and we have confidence in, the better off we are. And I would like to see that we're not spending $300,000 in professional services.
Yeah, it's a lot of different things that incorporate with that, and it's not just engineering. That's just an example.
But it would be nice that we had people trained to do it on.
But you got to, yeah, you're right. And some of that is, we have meter reading services. We have all these other things that are support the water side and the sewer side, so we're paying somebody to go around and read all our meters on a monthly basis. So there's a lot of different things like that are in it. When you look at budgets and you design and you look at your history, you're always wanting to be more efficient and more efficient. And if you don't ask for more if you don't need it. If I don't need those funds, they'll definitely sit there for sure. And if you probably go back and look at my last few budgets, you probably have seen some funds sitting.
Thank you.
Some of those things.
It drops pretty considerably though, from almost 45,000 to 20,000.
In the parks, that's the,
And then it drops again, another 8,000 in the next year.
In the parks, the biggest drop in professional services is due to us switching from a temporary staffing agency. We're staffing ourselves.
That's that 40 to 39,000 that was moved around.
Ray, did you have a?
Yeah, if I can just add to some of those services, I would love to have a licensed electrician. In fact, I teased Julie at one point about trying to hire her husband, who is a licensed electrician. We can't afford them.
No, I know.
I mean, so a lot of it's just equipment, like it's just, they have specialty equipment and those kinds. So some of it, yes, absolutely. We're trying to get people certified. We're trying to get people as much as we can. But there's always going to be some of those things. And actually the grout injection system is a great example of that. We used to have to pay somebody a couple $1,000
It was quite a bit, yeah.
to come in and seal one manhole, and we now do it for $2.56 or something like that. Yeah, so we definitely are working towards that. We agree with you wholeheartedly.
I'm just saying that I support that.
Yep, thank you.
Well, you see the, it's not just reading the meters, it's the billing, the mailing, it goes, I mean, some of those are Brandon's charges that end up back in my professional services line item.
It's always Brandon's fault.
It's all of our,
Okay,
that's what I'm saying, it's a multiple, it's many different things that hit those line items.
Can I ask one more question? What do we pay the meter reader?
23,000 some change.
Okay.
Yeah, a year.
any other questions? Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll meet back here at 15 after and give the people online a chance to send us some questions.
It's nice to have it. So it's going on out of the way. That's true. Just log it in.
Which one? Spend that money differently rather than.
No. search for things, so, you know.
45 minutes, solve it in 45 minutes.
Oh, that wasn't quick. Yeah, no, so that, yeah.
Yeah,
I
city
agree.
officer.
I agree.
It's like, we have the option, you don't have to, it's not all or nothing.
Right.
So you could put the marijuana money in the general fund and just move part of it over to help increase those numbers just a little bit, whatever those, and I'm not sure Brandon would have to work the math, but
Stays out of the red.
If you put all of the marijuana money back in there with the budget the way it's built, you'd be left with 3.79 at the end of 5 years. So almost
You're
4
talking
months.
about this year's, but next year you're gonna have marijuana money, and the following you're gonna have marijuana money.
This assumes the marijuana money continues, but not doubling certainly, or
Yeah, not
it
gonna
continues at a historical incline.
But I agree with the chief. I'd like to see where the economy goes.
Mhm. I agree also.
Yeah.
I just say put it in the general fund and we use it when we get to it.
All right.
I'd kind of like to know what everybody's talking about. It means we're all on mute on this end.
But you can't read lips?
So I'll cover it just to make sure that it gets in there. The discussion was if at the end of, if we change the police department's budget the way that the committee kind of agreed to earlier, there would not be, at the end of 5 years, the projection shows that the police department would not have enough money to make ends meet. And so we've adjusted that. We've had the conversation of should we put the marijuana money back in because we added 203,000, but then took out 182,000, and it just kind of threw it out of whack. You know, personnel costs increase faster sometimes than revenue does, ins and outs. But ultimately, what I'm hearing from the committee is leave the marijuana money in the general fund. We'll kind of cross the bridge as we go through these next 5 years and kind of hope this picture is a better one down the road.
Thank you.
Okay, and sorry about the mute. All right, that is it for me on that. Okay, finance and municipal court. So I believe it's seven. I don't have a lot to discuss in this section of the presentation, really. Finance and municipal court, there aren't a lot of changes. So first, we have spent the last 2 years, almost 3, kind of revising processes, beginning to embrace technology, Exhibit A, really focusing on using the tools that we have already had to kind of enhance our service offering to departments within the city. I have 3 staff members, not counting myself, in the finance department, an accounting supervisor, an accounting technician, and a utility billing specialist. And then in the municipal court side, I have a court administrator and 2 part-time court clerks. They're both 0.6 FTE. On the municipal court side, as far as changes, they've gone through a software change in the last fiscal year. And so they are beginning to as well kind of embrace that technology that's now at their hands, trying to find ways to make things more efficient and effective, part of the city's mission and vision. So that's kind of the focus the finance and municipal court have had. This budget is a status quo budget. There are no major changes. We talked briefly about the fact that the auditing expense, which was usually, or in the past, budgeted at 30,000, I've now bumped up to 40 in anticipation of an increase in that contract. I don't know if that's going to happen or not for sure, but that is something that could be there. So we are planning in case that occurs. If you look at the technical services line, that number has gone up as far as the budget is concerned from the 2020 adopted budget, two things kind of go into that. We've budgeted a 5% increase in our Springbrook system. It's our financial management software, or what they call ERP. We've also launched, and we're getting near the end finally of kind of the implementation phase, but we have put together a new kind of public transparency software through a company called ClearGov that will allow folks outside of City Hall to dive into our financials. They can kind of dig into what our history looks like in all of our departments. There's lots of graphs and pictures and things for them to kind of click on. It'll really give them kind of a better tool to navigate what the city is doing financially with their tax dollars, their user fees, the stuff that they pay to the city. So we're really excited about that tool. I hope to be able to demo that, a complete product for the council soon. But we're just kind of putting the finishing touches on making sure everything is entered into that system appropriately. So we are budgeting for that in the next fiscal year. The department heads did use that this year for their budget development. The jury's out on whether it was helpful or not. We also talked about credit card usage and the bank charges. So I kind of wanted to dive a little bit more into those, not fully in depth, but to kind of give you a little more background. I had my staff kind of pull what the credit card charges look like for our area. On an average transaction, we pay anywhere between $1.50 and $2 per transaction. It's the reason for the amount here is volume. We also in this bank charges pay, it's just under $500 a month usually, and it depends on the month. But about $480 a month to Umpqua Bank for processing our accounts. So that includes every time a check is paid, every time we cut a check and it goes out and the vendor cashes it, we incur a small fee for the check processing. Every time we run a check that we have received for utility fees or passport processing or anything else like that, we incur a fee for the bank to process that check. So every month, about $500 a month goes towards maintaining that checking account through Umpqua Bank. That's kind of the idea behind those bank charges. We'll certainly continue to look at what other options might be available to the city. We've had conversations with our IT vendor on kind of building what they call an API. And what that would allow us to do is kind of have a third party like Square or something similar, kind of have a console set up for people to do their payments and everything, and then we can import that information into our system. It would get us out of the bank charges through our current ERP. I couldn't tell you if they're better or not. We haven't fully dived into that. We're still just looking at options and seeing what is available out there for us. But that's kind of
I know you assured me you're going to look into that.
Yeah.
But also, I'd like to see us look into other banks and their fees. Some banks aren't charging fees. So it's different on business accounts. Certainly, your personal checking account, certainly most of the time you're not charged fees like that. Business banking is definitely different. And there's also limitations as to what banks we can use because only certain ones qualify as far as providing service to municipalities. So we will look at other options. But our options are fairly limited given kind of what's out there.
Is that why, like on your bank expenses, is that why it's increasing like $15,000 for that?
Yeah, the 55,000 is actually kind of about what we spend each year. So if you look at tab 4 and turn to page 36. This is where the bank charges used to be housed, is this non-departmental. We've moved them into finance, but you can see that in 2018, the bank charges were $41,473. In 2019, it jumped up to 58,000.
That explains 615 line, you only have 825.7.
What's
You
that?
moved it,
Sorry.
because you moved it, this
Yeah.
explains line 615.
I just have a question. Just curious, on beginning of finance, page 46, materials and supplies, went up 100 grand. What are you buying? Buy a new computer?
No. So we added we added 15,000 in the bank expenses. So I see the budget going from 193,000 to 214,000.
Well, in 1819, it was 118,000. And 193 and then 214.
In 2019, that is the last year that some of the charges, so it's.
Those are the charges you're talking about.
Yeah, so the bank charges are not in that, so if you take the 54,000 from that other
Gotcha.
page and add it in there, it starts a second. So it's accounting changes. We haven't, like I said, we haven't really added a lot to finance in the past. We did add a little bit of money this year for training and travel, as the other budgets have as well. But nothing major in this.
Yeah.
In this.
Is that so you can go to Louisiana?
Yeah, that, no.
Brandon,
They canceled that trip.
is all the finances of, revenue that you collect, does the city have several bank accounts for different?
We have two bank accounts primarily. So we have the bank account with Umpqua that has that meets the municipal banking rules. We also have an account with the state of Oregon through their local government investment pool. That's kind of where more of our savings sits and has the best interest rates of them. But we have those two.
Because, like, I've owned several businesses over the years, and I know when you go from a bank to a bank, they're going to fight for your business. And with me having a business account, if I had a savings account with them, they gave me better rates for my expenses and stuff. So you can move your savings to your checking or so if you have to pull.
Yeah. So with Umpqua specifically, we have what they call a money market. It's a state organized system, but we have a money market with them. We have a general checking account. We have our payroll checking account. We do have a couple of savings accounts that have, one of them has a CD in it and the other is leftover money from a bond back when. And so that money kind of sits in those accounts. Has different interest bearing rates. I can say that, and I don't know the exact time frame, but within the last probably 5 years, somewhere in the last 5 or 10 years, the city did move from KeyBank. Yes, from KeyBank over to Umpqua. I don't know what kind of spurred that change. I imagine it was, a review of fees and trying to get the best.
Does the city, like once a year, or is it every 5 years, that you try to go and check other banks and financial?
I don't know what they used to do in the past. I've been here for, let's see, I started in January 2018 and we haven't looked since I started.
Because it could save you guys a lot of money.
Potentially. And again, it comes down to business accounts and state regulations. There are different factors because we are a municipality. They are trying to meet certain reporting requirements and then have different processing needs. Not saying we wouldn't be able to find a better rate somewhere else, but.
Well, to answer your question back the day, we were with KeyBank and they never checked. It went a long time and they kept raising their fees.
So you guys were like putting up with it.
Yeah. So then we went per council action, go check out the competition. They came back with Umpqua. But I'm seeing the Umpqua is.
They're high.
They're raising their rates.
And it's volume based too. So, the more money we spend, the more those bank fees are going to accumulate.
But I think if the city would say once a year, ask the bank that you bank with, we'd like to sit down and go over our banking business. So they're knowing that you guys might be looking elsewhere. So their pencil is going to get a little sharpened and start to say, hey, we looked over what you spent last year. Okay, we're willing to give you a 0.5% credit or something.
Sure. We will definitely look into it in the next several months.
Brandon, can credit unions be in that loop?
I don't know that answer specifically. I think it comes down to if they can meet the municipal banking regulations. That's an avenue that I need to explore a little bit more. And so I don't know. I don't know of many cities that have a credit union account, so to speak. But certainly it may be possible. And those guidelines, those requirements come from the state of Oregon. And so we're left figuring it out based on what the state has given us as far as mandates and has given the banking industry as far as mandates. So, and part of it is you have to consider what's semi-local. So we get deposits, cash and check deposits all the time. We have to be able to take that somewhere. And so if for some reason, the cheapest bank is Portland, I'm not driving to Portland to deposit the cash twice a week. So we'll weigh what's out there. We'll look at what's semi-local, local, we'll see what we can get, and we'll review all of those. I told you my section would be really short. I don't really have anything else unless the committee has specific questions about finance and municipal court.
I've got one question. Yeah. What's investment services?
So 3 years ago, I believe, the council asked for the finance department to begin to look at how we could get a better interest rate. And so the city went out, did an RFP, found a found a group that would kind of help us put together an investment policy. We now have that on the books. And so this money is, if we get to the point where we are able to invest our cash outside in the bond market or different options, then that's what that money is for. It's $10,000 a year to manage that for us.
So it hasn't been used?
It has not. At this time, part of, we have not invested since I started anyways, and we haven't done that previously. We haven't done that because for multiple reasons. One is we were getting really good rates out of the local government investment pool, and our investment advisors said that they weren't going to be able to do much better at the time. That's one of the times when LGIP was actually doing a good job. Now, with the way the market has gone, municipal bonds and securities are, less than appealing. Usually, folks can run to bonds and things are a little bit safer and you get some return, but we've actually seen a decrease in some of those because everybody's rushing that way. And so it didn't make any sense to invest now. Part of the other problem with the city of Sweet Home is as well, the volume of cash that we have to invest, and especially with the wastewater treatment plant coming up. If we try to invest that cash, when you do those investments, you want them to be long-term. They have said that a $5 million investment is kind of the bare minimum that really we would see any kind of yield out of that is better than what we're doing now. And the city generally has about 12 million on hand, but we've been setting aside a lot of it for the wastewater treatment plant. And so by the time the treatment plant's done, we're going to be down to $5 to $7 million in cash on hand, which then means we can't really invest that. So we're evaluating all the options in that regard and trying to figure out how best to move forward. The city of Sweet Home is just small enough that it's hard to make those investments happen.
Need to sell some property. But we have a few.
Yeah, we had that discussion actually.
Anything else I can answer? Okay.
Okay, let's take 5 minutes, give the people on the internet a chance to send in questions.
What do we have left, Brandon? Just the executive part?
Yeah.
Any questions on the internet?
No.
Okay. We're going to go to executive and legislative budget. You doing that, Ray?
Yeah, not a whole lot to it. We're actually asking for about $100 less this year than we did last year. But otherwise, everything's pretty much the same straight across the board with no changes.
It's chapter 8 in your books.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Begins on page 38. So this is the fund for the executive department, which includes all of the council, the mayor, Julie and myself for personnel and costs associated with that.
It's under the library service.
Excuse me, Ray. It's 5, not 8. I'm sorry.
It's page 40.
38.
Yeah, 38 is the explanation with the flow chart. 39 has everybody's pictures on it, so you know who they are. And then the numbers start on page 40. So again, everything's across the board pretty similar, no changes from last year for the most part. A couple things here and there.
We got a humongous raise from 18 to 19.
I know that council's not asking for a raise.
It's like $200 or whatever. I can't add that, but holy moly.
I don't think you got a raise, but you had some vacancies.
There is, if you look, again, the 2018 actual for for training, travel and training was increased from 2019, went up in 2019, and is now evened out just a little bit, about the same. I do some travel and training, Julie does some travel and training, and then the council has actually started doing a little bit of travel and training for the councilors. 4 of us? The 4 of you? Did 4 go to the League of Oregon Cities? You?
Yeah.
3.
3 of you.
Yeah.
3 of us, yeah. 3 councilors went to the League of Oregon Cities conference last year with 3 staff. Brandon and I and Greg. Brandon and I and Greg actually presented one of the sessions. It was actually a really good conference.
So anything that you don't spend carries over? Okay.
This is actually in the internal service fund, and so anything that isn't spent isn't then charged out to departments.
Any questions, comments? Okay.
Real quick, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Councilor Coleman could not be here, but she did send some questions, so I'd like to read them and answer them. She did ask about professional services and the change. It was how we accounted for our copier charges and the difference between not supporting a capital Christmas tree this year. She had some questions about utilities being itemized. Some of them seem to be broken out, but not 2020 or the proposed 2021. Part of this, we're waiting to see what the actual numbers are because we don't know yet. She asked about staff pay differences between finance and municipal court, which we covered and talked about. But but some of it was just the way that salaries were allocated. Professional services was a difference for court appointed attorneys. Again, she asked about the 10K for the investment services. She asked about lien services, in which it's both a revenue and an expense. When we do a lien search, we receive $25, but it costs us $12 to search. She asked about equipment repair and finance and municipal court. It went from $71 to $6,000, and some of that's just, it varies from year to year on equipment needs. Camera has gone out, those kinds of things. Office supplies covers computer accessories, paper, pens, clipboards, and what we're proposing this year is actually in the middle of 2018 and 2019 actuals. She had several other questions, but you actually all asked them. You must have was keeping check marks. You asked many of the same questions, or staff actually answered them in their presentations. So, Greg, she did have questions about travel. Can you talk? There's travel expenses, she says, in stormwater, wastewater, water, and streets. I'm going to guess it just depends on if we send someone to training and how that's broken up between the different accounts.
Right, right, yeah.
That's all she had. Thank you.
Okay.
Think we need to break?
No.
I think we need the gavel.
Okay,
You need to.
so we've gone through this process, and now we need someone needs to make a motion. We need to get a second on it.
So a couple of things before we do that.
Okay.
Just remember, our request of you is that you table it after it's been after the motion and the second, to allow for time for the community, the public, to provide some feedback on what's been presented tonight, and kind of the budget overall. If you have any additional questions or things that you as a committee member think need to be changed, now's the time to do that before we do this motion, because it's certainly a lot more difficult to make any changes after it's been placed on the table. So I guess before we do that, does anybody have other questions for department heads, myself?
I got one last question. A few years back when I don't know, 3 years back maybe, when we took the economic improvement money, and we put this, what was it, $450,000 into a fund. Where did we put that exactly?
In the Economic Development Fund.
And that can't be touched.
No, last year the budget committee and the council approved actually moving it into the budget. So it is in the actual budget. The idea being we wanted the flexibility. We were working on the commercial exterior improvement program. And we had plans on working on some other economic development activities, which we've started, but haven't gotten completed yet. So
when we did that, would the budget committee be able to redo that and take part of that money and put it somewhere else?
So that money was left over from a CDBG grant. The Fed said we could, and it wasn't used.
Right.
And the Fed said we could keep it, but they asked us to make sure it's utilized for CDBG purposes, what the CDBG program does. I mean, I guess if you had a specific question, we could talk about it.
Well, my question is, when we put it there, we had the intent of, redoing the stores downtown and doing painting and everything else. It's just never got off the ground, and that money just lays there and waste.
Well, sorry, yeah.
And I understand we've spent part of it. I mean, we spent some of it, but there's still a lot of money in there, and I don't Maybe when we did that, maybe it was a mistake to put all of it in there. My question would be, can that be moved around?
Well, so council's got some pretty audacious goals for that money. Discussion of using that to help develop the Knife River property, using it for grant match funds, discussion for the 24th Avenue extension so that there's access from the highway 24th across the railroad into the Knife River. All of those are going to cost us more than $400,000.
Oh, correct.
Yeah, so again, it's your budget. If you wanted to move it, we'll put it where you tell us.
Well, part of that was that grant thing we just passed there at council.
Yeah, correct. Some of that we're anticipating about $50,000 of that money being utilized in a grant program to help local businesses who did not receive federal funds. And helping them make it through the whole pandemic as we've been closed down, so.
Well, hopefully they open this week or next week and we start getting the money back in the coffers.
I have a question for Greg.
Yes.
Greg, I came from a city in Florida that, okay, your stormwater is just runoff water, right? Is that what when you say stormwater? Like
Yeah, it's rainwater, potentially groundwater.
Does Sweet Home have a process that the community gets to use that water to sprinkle and pay less wattage charge for that?
No.
You don't have that?
Yeah, that's
maybe some of the bigger cities here.
No, I think what you may be talking about is reclaimed water.
Reclaimed.
Okay,
correct.
so you're talking about water that has gone through the water treatment plant, gone out to everybody's home, utilized in their home, gone into the sewer system, gone to the treatment plant, been treated, and then returned back in a separate system that people can draw off of, and then water their irrigation.
Yeah, smaller charge.
And use it for cooling towers and other industrial processes.
Correct.
We do not have a redundant system here now. So everything goes right to the creek.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a comment on the economic development money. You know, we had, when Jerry was here, he was working hard to get things done. Now we switched to Blair. And that's one of the reasons I think that part of this has not gotten as forward as we would like. And he's only been here like 6 months or something like that. And so it's really difficult for him to get a good feel of what's going on and what we want. And he knows what we would like to have. Getting there is the other issue. So that's kind of where I feel on that. I would not be for moving that money to somewhere else besides economic development. I think that's why we did the money there, and that's why I think we should keep it there. That's just my opinion.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Yes.
I move that the Budget Committee of the City of Sweet Home approve the budget for the 2020-21 fiscal year in the amount of $29,363,383.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve this budget and send it to the city council. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Roll call.
Are we tabling the motion?
I think we wanted to. A motion in a second.
Table this until next.
Yeah, we wanted to table it till the next meeting so people online would be able to comment, yeah.
Okay.
So Mr. Chairman, I move that we table the vote until next Tuesday.
Second.
Been moved, seconded.
I second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no dissenting votes, I guess it's going to the city council. And that concludes our business for this evening. Okay, let me say one. We aren't finished yet. Be sure and show up Tuesday next week. Is that
May 19th.
Yeah. Okay, Brandon?
We have one more motion that needs to be made.
Okay.
There's two sets. One is the expenditure authorization that sends the budget to the city council. The other is to levy the taxes. So this has to be done so that the council can then vote on whether or not the property taxes should be levied at their rates. So that one's on the screen as well for whomever would like to make that motion. Oh, that's on my screen.
Not on our screen there, Brad.
Come on, Brad.
There we go.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Okay, who wants to read that one?
I move that the Budget Committee of the City of Sweet Home approve property taxes for the 2021 fiscal year at the rate of 1.4157 per $1,000 of assessed value for the permanent rate tax levy, in the amount of $7.85 per 1,000 of assessed value for the police local option tax levy, and then the amount of $1.17 per 1,000 of assessed value for the library services local option tax.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
And now we need to table that also.
Are we not needing roll calls for these?
You can just table it, Chairman.
Okay,
To vote to table.
it's tabled.
Now I am done.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your time and questions and input.